Okay, so I want to welcome everybody tonight, or again in the daytime, depending on what country you are. Last week I had somebody from Kenya, so that's why I'm saying this. And welcome to Dr. Hood's Helping Others Overcome Determinants LLC. Tonight's topic is going to be on test articles, or it also can be called investigational product training. These are the same acronyms that we had in our previous training. So I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. You weren't on those trainings, so these are just a list of acronyms that are more common in clinical research.
Okay.
And I added a COLA to it, this list, and that's the what it stands for right here. Okay, on our agenda, we're going to do an introduction of the host, introduction of the group, and these are our topics. We're going to go over the test article and investigational product and important systems that's typically used. We're going to go over the investigator brochure, pharmacy manual and appendix, test article, investigational product handling standard operating procedures, blinded plan, the shipping and storage of TA, test article, temperature excursion. Oh, that's supposed to be excursion. Then we're going to take a 5-minute break, go over medical areas and IRB reporting, test article destruction, and then the scenarios are where we're going to uh, let you all go into the breakout rooms and discuss the discrepancies I've made with the documentations to see if you all can find them. Okay, so brief overview of me for the ones who don't know me. I have 3 degrees, BS in biology, a master's in clinical research administration, and a doctorate in public health. I also hold a certified medical assistant certification. Far as my career, I started out as a patient care tech, went over into in the hospital, went over into the clinic and ENT, then became a research encounter specialist. And from 2011 to 2021, I was a study coordinator. And I started being a CRA in 2020. Hold on. What did I say? Yeah, that's right. In 2021, I started to be a CRA. And then in March of 2025, I decided to start this LLC, trying to help just give people a better foundation of clinical research training. I don't know everyone's background, but I know when I started, it was pretty much here, watch me do one visit and then you on your own. So some organizations are not set up the best for the onboarding process, and research is ever changing. So looking at these videos will kind of help people stay abreast on what it is they should and shouldn't be doing in clinical research. And this is me. This was our 20th anniversary from graduating high school. So I went back to my high school campus and I took this picture. So that was in 2022. Okay. So now we're going to go around the room, let you all introduce yourself, giving your name, your state, your desired role, and your dream car. I think my dream car is the Chevy Tahoe. You all can go in the order as you appear on the tab down here if you want to. So that'll
Sure.
be Ramona, you're first.
Yes, Kentress. I think I'll go first.
Okay,
Hi,
go ahead.
everyone. My name is Dhanalakshmi Somaraju. I have a master's degree in analytical chemistry from India and over 4 years of experience in pharmaceutical, environmental, and academic laboratory settings as a quality control chemist. Recently, I have completed my clinical research coordinator internship program from the CRC Academy, and I've been looking to enter into the clinical research field. I'm targeting mainly on the entry level positions in the research field. I'm based in California, and my dream car is Maybe a BMW. Thank you.
Okay, next.
I'm not sure if I'm next, but I'll go ahead and go. My name is Ramona Colvin, and I'm currently in a clinical research coordinator role with sickle cell. I've been doing that for the past 3 years. Before then, I was with psych and neurobiology, still in the clinical research coordinator role. I am currently in Alabama. And my dream car is AMG G Wagon.
Woo. But now is the G Wagon a bit? I don't know. That's a
It's a
Mercedes.
Benz,
It's a
yeah.
B. Okay, I was going to say I thought it was a BMW too. Okay, okay, and last but not least,
Yeah, I am Shilpa. I have my bachelor's in science and bachelor's in medicine and surgery from India, and I worked as a pediatrician for over 4 years in India. And later, I moved to US, pursuing Master of Public Health right now. I'm in final semester right now. I've also completed clinical research training through Clinical Research Fast Track recently, and I'm exploring opportunities in clinical research field, mainly targeting entry level roles like clinical research assistant or coordinator. I'm from Austin, Texas,
okay.
and my dream car is Porsche Carrera.
You said a Porsche.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I don't like the fancy cars, the foreign cars. I just need a big truck. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next one. Okay. Okay, so text article, and again, it also can be called investigational product, and then the important system. So, text article is a drug, device, vaccine, or other treatments that the sponsor has chosen to investigate, but has yet to be approved. This is why we do the clinical trials, self-explanatory. And a system that go along with that product is called interactive response system or interactive response technology, IRT. The it is a system that the site enter in the data, whichever data is required. It might be the person's demographics, such as their date of birth, their initials, what is their background treatment, and it's going to trigger the drug that they should be assigned. That medication can be a placebo or it can be the active investigational product. It might be blinded to everybody at the site, and it might be just blinded to the patient. So that will depend on how the protocol is written. But the IRT system is the backup system when it comes to test article. Any questions? Okay, so the rest of the slides is going to basically give the definition of the topic and talks about how the site should act on that topic and how the CRO, the clinical research organization, or the CRA, the clinical research associates, should respond. So, for the investigator brochure, it is a detailed document summarizing all the clinical and non-clinical data about an investigational product, drug, or device used in a clinical trial. So, there are four main phases of clinical research: phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the preclinical. So that is the data that they get from the animal testing to try to find out the toxicity of the drug. So all of that data from depending on what stage you're in the clinical trial will be in that investigational brochure. So if it's phase you conducting a phase 1 trial, then only the preclinical data will be in the investigative brochure. If you're on phase 2, then 1 in preclinical, phase 3, then 2, 1 in preclinical, and so on and so forth. So that's what the investigative brochure is. So how should the site respond to the IB? The principal investigator should sign and date the IB acknowledgement page. So every investigator brochure comes with the first page for the PI to sign. That signature documents that the PI has reviewed and understand the information that is within that IB. And who should also train on the IB is a sub-I if he or she is assigned to assess adverse events, because when you assess adverse events, you have to decide whether or not it's related to the investigational product or investigational device. So that is why it's important for a sub-I to be trained on the IB. The pharmacist should be trained on the IB because typically if the clinical site has a pharmacist, they're going to be the ones dispensing or preparing the drug. So this is why it's important for them to train. And then the unblinded team, that could be an unblinded nurse or unblinded study coordinator that's going to dispense or administer the medication. So this is why this group should be trained on the investigator brochure. That training should be documented. Any subsequent IBs that are approved throughout the study, those individuals should train on those as well. And they should not continue to work on the study until that training has been documented. Depending on how the sponsor decides to submit these documents to the IRB, the site might have to be responsible for submitting to the IRB, or the CRO might be responsible for submitting to the IRB. So it just depends on the contract details. And once that approval is received, it should be filed in the investigational site file. Now, the responsibilities as it relates to the CRO or the clinical research associate, again, they should submit to the IRB if they are contracted to do so. The CRO must provide these IB document to the CRA. So it is important that the CRA is familiar with the information in the investigator site file. So if you've ever seen one, it is a lot of data in those investigation brochures. So you might not read every word page for page, but the important thing is you understand the composition of the drug, the side effects, and how it should be administered. The CRA should verify that the PI has signed that signature page, and they should retrieve it for the electronic trial master file, or the ETMF. They should also confirm that the appropriate staff have completed the training and receive a copy of that training if it's required for the ETMF. So that training document might have to be stored on site, but it's not necessarily has to be uploaded to the ETMF. So you find that out based on.
Okay.
Mute your line. Okay, so you find that out based on what the sponsor has decided. Any questions about the investigational brochure? Okay. Knowledge check. What document would the CRA use to confirm who is eligible to complete the IB training if the training is based on assigned tasks? And Ramona, since you indicated you were currently a study coordinator, I'm going to give somebody else a chance to answer first. And if they don't know the answer, we'll let you answer if you know it. So what document that has to be completed at the site level would the CRA use?
Is it the delegation of authority log?
Delegation.
That's exactly it. It's the delegation law. So this is why it's so important as a CRA, once you come to a site, to familiarize yourself with the delegation law, because you need to know who is assigned to what task. Because there are some sub-Is that are not assigned to assess AEs. So if they're not assigned to assess AEs, they don't necessarily have to review the IB. And there are some study coordinators, because again, you have the unblinded and the blinded team depending on the design of the trial. The blinded team does not necessarily have to review the IB. Now, some sites make all their staff do it, but it's not really a requirement because they don't deal with the investigational drug. So that is absolutely correct. It's the delegation law. Okay, so the pharmacy manual. So the pharmacy manual is supposed to be a piece of the protocol. Exactly what's in the protocol should be in the pharmacy manual. But for whatever reason, if there is a discrepancy, you have to follow the protocol. I'm trying to admit that person. Um, okay, so did y'all understand that? You can just do a thumbs up on your reaction. Okay, good. So the pharmacy manual is a comprehensive document that details the protocols, procedures, and guidelines for the pharmacy or the unblinded team to follow in ensuring consistent and safe practice in medication management and dispensing. So that pharmacy manual is basically your mini protocol. So what is the site's responsibilities as it relates to the pharmacy manual? All eligible staff should train on the original and subsequent versions of the pharmacy manual before completing any unblinded procedures. So once a new pharmacy manual has been approved, then new training must take place before they complete any procedures. And we can't hold up changes because nobody has been trained on a new one. So you can't continue to do the task that's in that old manual because you have yet to train. You have to reschedule patients or prioritize training so you can complete the training so you can do the correct steps moving forward. All eligible staff should follow the procedures as it relates to the protocol. Okay, so once you're a CRA, what are you responsible for? You're responsible for making sure that training was done and it has been documented. You also are responsible for making sure the pharmacy manuals are filed in the pharmacy binder. So the pharmacy binder is the mini version of the investigational site file. It's separated from the investigator site file if the study it has a blinded and unblinded side. If the primary CRA is also the person who deals with the medication, then there's no separate binder. So any questions on the pharmacy manual? Okay. Okay, test article investigational product handling, the standard operating procedures. The site's SOP handbook is a document that the site creates detailing how it receives, stores, administers, maintains the blind, and destroys test article medication or devices. So this document belongs to the site. They have created this document. However, we as CRAs have to make sure that they're following their own procedures. It's one of the number one things an auditor is going to come and try to make sure it's being done. Are you following the own guidelines that you have created? So the site designates a specific person or persons to construct the document. It's usually like their regulatory or the quality team that does this, but every site is different. The document should have a version number and effective date. So things change. As I mentioned earlier during the introduction, research is always changing. So once they learn a new way to do something or a better way to do something, they can update their SOP. But they need to make sure when they update it, they change the version number and the effective date. The document should be stored and made available upon request for an auditor, inspector, or CRA. So even though it's their document, if we request it to make sure they're following things in the correct way, they should provide it to us. The site's PI or designee should train staff on the processes. So as we know, the investigator is responsible for everything that happens on the site as it relates to that clinical trial. So they either do the personal training or they designate somebody to do the personal training. And again, it's usually their regulatory staff or quality person. All applicable staff should follow the guidelines outlined in their SOP. Now, as it relates to the CRO or the CRA, the CRO should verify whether the sponsor wants this document filed, included in the ETMF. So typically, when you're dealing with IP, they do want this document retrieved from the site because, again, they want to make sure that the site is following their own guidelines. The CRA should review the document especially in cases where the site has both blinded and unblinded components. And then the CRA should retrieve the document if applicable. So any questions about the site's SOP? Okay, we got a knowledge check coming up. Can the CRA make changes to the site's SOP, especially if they found that they don't really agree with the protocol? Can the CRA make those changes? Anybody?
No.
Correct. No, it is, again, it is the site's document. So we can't make changes. We can make suggestions. We can remind them that their procedure contradicts the protocol, but we cannot change their document. And it has been some cases that I've experienced that the site has refused to do certain things because it goes against their SOP. So that needs to be discussed with the person above you when that type of situation happens. But I've seen that. Okay, the blinding plan. So the blinding plan is a standard operating procedure to conceal the information about the treatment assignment. So again, based on the protocol, some protocols, the treatment is blinded to just the patient. Some protocols, the treatment is blinded to the PI and the blinded staff, and only the unblinded team knows. So in the event that this happens, the site has to complete this blinding plan. It's usually a template provided by either the sponsor or the CRO, so they can detail how they're going to hide the identity of the drug. So that could be as simple as making the patient turn their head. The drug must be carried in a box that you can't see through and covered up. If it's an IV bag, they have to wrap something around it to keep the labeling from showing. So whatever procedures they're going to put in place to prevent unauthorized people from being unblinded, it has to be detailed in this blinding plan. And it's typically some extra pages that they can comment if something changes. So the site's responsibilities, they're going to complete the CRO's blinded plan template and file it in the pharmacy site file binder. They're going to follow the documented steps to prevent unauthorized parties from learning the exact treatment of the patient. And they're going to report any unblinding of the subject's treatment immediately to the CRA. So we know everything is not foolproof. So something might happen. We have to make sure that we do everything to prevent it from happening, but should it happen, it has to be reported. All the steps that happen that leading up to that unblinding needs to be reported to the CRA. And it also needs to be reported to the PI. But the catch is when it's the unblinded is reported to the PI, you can't tell the PI what the patient was assigned to. You can only tell that the circumstance happened. So you can't say, Susan found out the patient got kit number, blah, 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 and now we know they got the real drug. You can't do that. You have to write it in a way where it just says, hey, this person was unblinded on this day related to this subject, and the necessary steps are going to take place. That's all the PI should know. The rest of the situation should move forward with whoever is the head of the unblinded team, whether that is an unblinded study coordinator, study nurse, or the pharmacist. Then we need to wait on what the decision the sponsor has decided. Do they want to take that patient out completely? Or do they want the patient to continue in the trial? That's a decision for the sponsor to make. Follow the requirements for completing and submitting the blinded portion of the physician order before sending it to the unblinded team. So within the blinding plan, you're also going to have that blinding physician order. And this is where the blinded team has decided that everything that the patient needed to meet for eligibility or randomization, they have met it. And now we're going to send this order form or if it was in a regular clinical setting, like a prescription, we're going to send this prescription to the pharmacist. We identify the subject, we identify that they met all criteria, and we sign and date it, and we scan it in, we send it to them. Once that process has been complete, then the blinded team should no longer have access to that document, far as labeling the kit that the person received. Only thing that should be on the document, as far as the unblinded team, is they should indicate the subject received the dose and what time they received the dose, and that's it. So, far as the CRO side, the CRA should review the responses to the blinded plan and verify that it meets the protocol's expectation. So if you say you're gonna carry the drug in a box, we have to make sure that no one can see through that box. So that's the kind of stuff that the CRA is going to be verifying. Then they're going to collect the document and for the ETMF. Then they're going to do periodic checks to make sure the document has not been updated. And when they look at those physician's orders, this is key. They want to pay close attention to those times, because they want to make sure the time that the physician has signed is before the time the blinded team has pulled the medicine and administered the medicine. So what do you think is going to happen if it turns out that the physician order was signed after the blinded team pulled the medicine and administered the medicine? What has just taken place? Anybody?
Can you go over the question once again?
Yes. So if a CRA comes to the site and they review the physician order, which another way you can say is a prescription, and they review that and see that the prescription or the physician order was signed after the unblinded team pulled the medication and administered, what has just happened?
Tampering?
Say it again.
Is it like tampering, you know?
Is it a protocol deviation?
Protocol deviation. So if the protocol has specified that the physician order must come first and they didn't follow that process, this is a protocol deviation. Now, if the protocol did not specify that the time had to be first, it is a good clinical practice issue. So we got to make sure what is specific in the protocol. And the reason why I brought this up, because I was on a clinical trial that indicated that the physician order must come first in the training slides, but it was not written in the protocol. And the site pushed back. And I actually agreed with the site. Because it does not matter if they were in the training slides. Training slides are not the protocol. It has to be in the protocol. So I did deem them on good clinical practice, because it's not good clinical practice for a site to proceed with with pulling the medication before they received the order. But the reason why they were able to do that, because as the blinded team randomized the patient, they also get the alert as well that they can go in and pull the medication, but they should have waited on that physician order. So it can be either or depending on how the protocol is written. So that's why I wanted to point that out. Okay. Shipping and storage of the test article and temperature excursions. So what is the site responsible for? Site must ensure that the transit temperature device is stopped immediately upon arrival. So when you get a box of IP, whether it is room temperature or came refrigerated or came frozen, it should have a transit temperature temp tail. That's usually what they're called. And they're going to have a stop button on them. As soon as you open that box, that stop button should be hit. And that is to prevent false temperature excursions. Then the staff must confirm the shipment is received in good condition. So open the kits, look at the bottles, make sure none are damaged, they don't appear to be tampered with, the labels are visible. That is the steps, the things you should do to make sure it's in good standing. Then the staff must store the medication as specified in the protocol. So we can't just sit it on the table for a long period of time and get to it when we get ready. We got to quickly scan the kits numbers compared to the packing slip, and then we need to place it in appropriate storage. Again, whether that's the refrigerator, the freezer, or room temp. The staff must follow the protocol related to daily manual or digital temperature recording. So the protocol is going to specify if digital data is required to record temperature, where it's just like every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes, they're going to make that known in the protocol. Or if the site can just do a manual, just write down daily what the temperature was based on what they saw. So the protocol, most trials that I've seen lately have gotten away from manual temp logs if they don't have a backup data logger. That's what it's called. If they don't have a backup data logger that's constantly recording the temperature, they don't want the manual log anymore. And then the site needs to make sure that all shipping documents, including the transit temp report, order packing slip, RT confirmation, should be filed in the pharmacy binder. Okay? So what is the CRA going to do once they come? The CRA is going to verify all these steps during their visit. So they're going to make sure that that temperature report in transit is in good standing. They're going to make sure you file that slipping packing slip. They're going to make sure that the information that you documented on the accountability log matches the packing slip. They're going to, they should, some people don't, but they should. So if you go to the site and you review order number 1 and order number 2. Order number 1 had 5 kits. Order number 2 had 6 kits. That should be documented in your report. Some people just might document the order number or the arrival date, but to be concise, I would suggest that you document the order number, the date it arrived, and the quantity that was associated with that packing slip. And that just covers yourself. And then the CRA should review the temperature logs to assess for excursions. So we want to make sure that the duration that IP has been stored, that there were no temperature excursions. And if they were, they should be reported accordingly. Any questions on the shipping and storage of the test article? Okay, knowledge check. You're probably gonna have to get your phones out for Google. But we have 3 dealing with this. Okay, so the CRA noted that the required temperature for the studies test article is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. The site is collecting the temperature in Fahrenheit. The daily temperatures range from 35.6 that should have been Fahrenheit to 45.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Is this a correct range? And I'll let y'all get your phones out to do conversion to see if this is correct. What do you think?
I think it's correct.
Okay. She thinks it's correct. Anyone else?
It's near to the temperature mentioned actually. 45-degree Fahrenheit is 7.3 degrees Celsius. And 35-degree Fahrenheit is 1.9 degrees Celsius. So I think it's very near.
It'll be easier for you to just convert the 2 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit and see what you
Oh,
get. You're going to get
yeah.
35.6. And then if you convert the 8 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, you're going to get, I think, 46.4.
Yeah, true. Correct.
Okay. So that means that this is in range. Now,
Right.
them logging it in Fahrenheit is not necessarily a protocol deviation because it can be converted. It's going to be time consuming. And as the CRA, you might want to encourage them to go ahead and document it, the correct unit, but it is within range. Okay. The CRA know that the site collects temperature using a digital temperature device that records for 24 hours and records a manual reading on a log each morning, Monday through Friday before 9 a.m. Is this a deviation from the protocol that requires a digital reading? So it's them recording it manually in addition to the digital temperature device. Is that a protocol deviation?
I think it is protocol deviation.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, it is not a protocol deviation. It's always
Okay.
good to overdo but not underdo. So because the required way to document it is being done, which is the digital temperature device, it is okay if their SOP says they have to also do a manual reading Monday through Friday. So it's not a protocol deviation. Okay. So then
Okay.
the last scenario. The site know that one of the kids have been left in the open box since its arrival, which is now 20 hours later. The box is in the storage room with a daily monitor and it has no alarms. The kit storage requires a temperature of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Should the site report as an excursion? So the bottle is left in the box, and the box is left in a monitored room. Other medications are on the shelf. It's required for temperatures of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, should the site report as an excursion. Ding, 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 ding.
Because it has no alarms
Yes, we should report it.
reported.
Okay. So what exactly is the excursion for the ones who say they should report it? Look at the details. It's left in an open box since its arrival. The box is in the storage room with a daily monitor that has no alarm. So the other medications are in that same room, but they're just on the shelf. This medication is still in the box. The kit storage requires a temperature of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius should this site report as an excursion. 20 to 25 degrees Celsius is room temp.
Room temperature. Yeah.
So therefore, is no excursion. Now, if they had the temperature requirement as is in question 1, which is 2 to 8, then that would be an excursion of 20 hours. And from my experience, these are the common room ranges of medication. You got the 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, because that's for refrigerated medication. You're going to have that 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. That's for your room temp medication. And typically for your frozen medication, it's going to either say a -20 freezer or a -70 freezer. I have not seen any ranges outside of those 4. Now, that doesn't mean it don't exist, because I typically dealt with diabetes medication, thyroid medication, and vaccines. But I just wanted to make that known. So if you learn those 4, you're pretty much set on understanding converting 2 degrees to 8 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, or Fahrenheit to Celsius. And if I'm not mistaken, that 20 to 25 degrees is 68 to 77. But are you back? All right. We lost Ramona. Not sure why, but it looked like we lost Ramona. Okay. Okay, so it is break time. You all can take a 5 to 10 minute break. We'll return back in about 10 minutes. And then once we come back, we only got 2 more slides to go over. And then we're going to go, you all are rather, we'll go into the breakout room and see if you can find the discrepancies. So if you haven't already downloaded the research material, it's in the chat. The first page is going to consist of the delegation log. The second page is going to consist of the site master accountability log. Right under that is going to give you some protocol details and some monitoring details. And then under that, you will see your order slips, your fake packing slips. And I want you all to try to take about 15 minutes and find as many discrepancies as you can as it relates to how the patient received the medication and returned it, the CRA, completing the visits, and the delegation log. So let's look at we'll be back in, let's make it 8 minutes. Okay, so the unfortunate thing that we hope never happens is medical errors as it relates to the IP and IRB reporting. This is what we're going to discuss in this slide. So, what are the site's responsibilities? Should the site find out that a subject or subjects have experienced a medication error, the study coordinator should immediately report to the principal investigator. The PI should assess the subject for adverse events. So we need to find out if the patient has experienced any adverse events closely around the time that they experienced the medication error. The PI should report to the CRA and the medical monitor of the study. So medical monitors are, I guess you could say, the experts dealing with this indication or the drug that are placed at the top of clinical trials. Some work for the CRO, the clinical research organization, and some work directly for the sponsor. Some clinical trials have both, and some clinical trials may have one or the other. But the PI should get in contact with that medical monitor when we have medication errors. The PI or designee should review the IRB reporting criteria and report the issue within the required timeline. I would say probably 100% of the time, medication errors should be reported to the IRB. So the IRB has a list of properly reportable criteria, and you need to be familiar with that list. We learned that in the previous training. And we need to know that time frame. So some IRBs require reporting within 5 days, some are within 10 days. So whatever their reporting criteria, we need to make sure that we're following that as well. And the PI should re-educate the subject on administration, compliance, and assess whether the medication should be stopped for the subject's safety. So if the medication error was due to the subject, then the PI should re-educate that person. Now, the study coordinator could do it, but since this is a serious matter, it probably should come from the principal investigator or a medically qualified staff. So if the sub-I is available, and that sub-I is an MD, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, they should be ones to talk to that subject about that medication error. Now, what are responsibilities on the CRO side or the CRA side? The CRO, the medical monitor, will decide if breaking the blind of the treatment is necessary. So based on the medication error, and whether or not the patient experienced adverse events, we need to know whether or not we need to break the blind. So the PI shouldn't do this on him or her own. They should get this direction from the medical monitor. The CRA team will report to the sponsor. So the CRA reports to the person above them, and that person above them needs to report it to the sponsor. So the sponsor needs to be aware of this medication error as well. The CRA should perform re-education if the medical error is due to site staff. So medical errors can be either way. It can be because the patient didn't take the drug accordingly, or it could be because the site did not instruct the patient correctly or provided them with the wrong kit. So if that should happen, it is the responsibility of the CRA to re-educate that site staff and have a conversation with the PI. The CRA should facilitate the contact between the PI and medical monitor. So oftentimes, the medical monitor contact is not readily available to the site, even though it might be at the beginning of the trial and it's on this long contact list. Usually, like, their email address is not readily available. So the CRA should help facilitate that discussion between the PI and the medical monitor. If the medical error is due to dispensing out of temperature medication, so if we gave the patient the right drug and they took the drug correctly, but that medication should have been quarantined because at a period of time it was not stored the correct way, we have to make sure the excursion was reported to the IRB as well. So that is another way we can have a medical error as it relates to the test article. So let's go back to that box that we was talking about, that one kit that was left in the box. Now that kit should have been stored in the refrigerator, and it had been outside of the refrigerator for 20 hours, but in fear of getting in trouble or fear of looking incompetent, that study coordinator just popped it in the refrigerator like nothing happened. And then that patient received that medication and they had adverse events. That temperature excursion should have been reported. So the CRA becomes a private investigator at this time. They need to investigate why that medication was out of range and why it was not reported. So I just wanted to point that out. So any questions about medication error or IRB reporting? Okay. Okay, test article destruction. So at the end of the trial, we got to get rid of the used kits. We got to get rid of the kits that were never been opened. How we get rid of those depends on the protocol. So some protocols may say that the sponsor wants everything shipped back to the depot and they will destroy. Some protocols say that it is okay for the site to destroy on site. So it just depends on the protocol. So what should the site do? Review the protocol policies regarding the return of the test article. They should keep bottles until the CRA has verified accountability and provides guidance on how to dispose of them or return to the depot. So once a patient brings a bottle back or a kit back and the site has verified that they brought it back and they have counted, okay, I counted 3, that they had 3 left or they had 4 left, and they document that. That is not to go ahead to destroy that kit or that bottle. They must wait till the CRA confirms that number before anything can be done to that bottle. Site staff should file all documentation of drug destruction in the pharmacy binder. If the item is set for depot return, the site should retain a copy of the shipping label. So this is very important because this is an investigator product. And as we know, things get lost in transit or is delayed in transit. So it's important to keep a copy of that shipping label so we can make sure that the box got to the appropriate destination. If the drug is destroyed on site via their medical waste contract, I think a lot of people are familiar with Sterilite. That's a big time medical waste destroying company. We have to document when that IP was picked up and when it was destroyed. So the site might keep it in a bag for days before that pickup happens. So we need to document the day it was put in the bag. Then we need to document the day that that bag was picked up. And then the vendor should provide what's called a certificate of destruction to let them know, okay, this has been incinerated, now the drug is destroyed. All that documentation must be stored in the pharmacy binder. So as the CRA, we basically come on site and make sure those things have been done. We train the site on whether or not the drug can be destroyed on site or it should be shipped. We provide them the necessary guidance if it's going to be returned, if they have to provide their own shipping label, if the sponsor is going to pay for the shipping label, we have to have that discussion. And if shipping is required, the CRA should help the site staff facilitate return properly by properly training everybody. But still, they have to retrieve those documents, the copy of destruction documents, the certificate of destruction, and that final accountability log. So that is important. So you got an accountability log, and the site receives 100 kits, but they only randomize 56. So now you have 44 kits that don't have any information that it was dispensed. So you need to draw a line through the subject information fields where it asks for the subject ID, the day it was dispensed, the day it was returned. You have to line through that, initial and date, and then you need to indicate that it was destroyed in the comment section and the date that it was destroyed. That's how you finalize that site level accountability log. Any questions on destruction? Yeah, fine. Okay. Dispensing and administration. So the person conducting the visit must be familiar with the protocol and complete dispensing and administration procedures. The IRT system, so we mentioned that earlier, it must be contacted to retrieve the medication assignment. So we can't randomly just pull a bottle. Okay, I like this patient, I'm gonna get them the active drug. This patient was rude, so I'm gonna make sure they got placebo. That's not how it works. We have to make sure that we use the IRT system to dispense the drug, and we retain that confirmation slip. So that confirmation slip is gonna have a timestamp of when we entered the data into the system, what that assignment was, and the date of that visit. So if this is supposed to be visit 5, that confirmation letter should indicate that that's visit 5. Okay, if the assignment is blinded to all site staff and the subject, no further steps are required. So if everybody is already blinded, then we don't have to do any steps to try to protect that confirmation letter because everybody is blinded. But if the medication requires blinding steps, such as hiding the packaging, having the subject turn during administration, or concealing the test article in a box, then we must follow those steps. We need to make sure that our source documents the medication that was dispensed, the date, and the time. So the IRT confirmation is not a complete documentation. That individual's chart, you should have the coordinator or whoever administered gave kit number, write it out, time, write it out, date, write it out. That should also be on the source because the IRT is from the computer, but the site writing it is their source. Also, we need to document the quantity. Now, if it's one bottle, you can say one bottle because the protocol knows how much is in that bottle. So it's not necessary to say one bottle, 60 pills, because we already know all bottles have 60 pills. Now, but when it comes to what's returned, we have to document what we counted, not what should have been returned, but exactly what is left in the bottle. And this is how you're going to test compliance. Okay, so what are the responsibilities of the CRO or the CRA? CRA must verify that these procedures met the protocol. CRA must verify that the correct kit was dispensed by reconciling the IRT confirmation list with the subject source document. So that is why it's important. We have to look at both. The CRA must verify that no unauthorized person was unblinded to the subject's treatment. So we always want to ask that question if you are unblinded CRA. Was any blind broken since the last time I came? CRA must confirm the medication dispensing was documented on both the site level master log and the subject level accountability log. Now, not all protocol is going to have that subject level. So that's why that source is so important. That's why documenting that date and time is so important because they might not have a specified site level accountability log, but all sites must have the site level accountability log. Any questions on dispensing and administration? Okay. And this is the last slide before you go into your breakout rooms. So drug accountability, site responsibility. You want to ensure that those kits that's listed on the packing slip, that you have logged them on the site accountability log. And usually the accountability log is going to ask for the order number, the lot number, the kit ID, and the expiration date. Those are typically what a site level accountability log asks for as it relates to the IP. And then the other side is going to be related to the subject that received it, the date that they receive it, and what they receive and what they return. And then that last part of the accountability log is usually going to have a place for the CRA to verify that the information is correct. Okay, so designated site staff should record all dispense and return quantities on the subject source as well as the master log. All kits or bottles should be retained for the CRA verification. So again, we mentioned that on 2 slides before, but that is so important that it's not destroyed. Now, if the medication is a shot, it is typical that has to go in the sharps container. And the labeling related to that shot is saved. So for safety reasons, they do not want you to try to save a needle. So keep that in mind. Now, sometimes they have their own sharps container that they want you to put it in because at the end of the trial, they want to be responsible for destroying it. But we never save a used needle. Never, 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 never. Never save a used needle. The site staff should ensure that the electronic data capture or the EDC system is updated with the dispensed and returned medication. So usually in the EDC system, they're going to have you to document the information from the source in that system. And it is good clinical practice to have a second verifier of the retrieved medication before dispensing it. Now, it's not a requirement, but it's a good practice. It helps minimize medication errors, because if you got a person that's real busy or they're randomizing several people in one day, it is human error for them to pull the wrong medication or confuse the two. And if you don't have a second person to verify, what they should do is verify again. So they verify once they pulled it from the storage place, whether that was the freezer, the refrigerator, or the shelf in the room temp storage room. But they also need to verify right before they give it to the patient. So we know in the hospital we have that timeout process where you look at the patient ID and you verify the procedure, and it's called timeout. So we want to make sure we do that timeout again. Okay. All right. And then the CRO's responsibility. The CRA should verify that all listed kits from the shipping order were accurately documented on the master log. The CRA should review the source and recount all medication to verify that the return quantity is accurate. So we have to do a lot of counting. So, it's been 20 people since the last time we came. We got 20 bottles, we got 50 bottles, whatever that number is, we must recount every bottle to verify the quantity is accurate. The CRA is responsible for ensuring the subject was compliant with the administered dose. The CRA is responsible for reconciling the dispensed drugs. So it takes a lot of documents to make sure the reconciliation is correct. So first you got that RRT system. Did the site pull the right drug? Then you have that source document. Did the site provide the right drug? Okay. Then you have the source document to say, was the right drug returned? Then you have the electronic document, the EDC says, was the data correctly transcribed from that source into the system? And then was the final quantity documented back on the master log? So it takes a lot of steps to reconcile one bottle, but we have to make sure we do those steps. And this is why a lot of times clinical trials separate the blinded team from the unblinded team, because that drug accountability is so tedious and they don't want that one CRA to have to do both sides. Okay. And then lastly, the CRA should provide site staff guidance on whether the drug destruction is allowed intermittently during the trial or at the end of the trial. So sometimes some sites, they enroll so much they just can't keep up with the excess bottles. So in the event that happens, they can get special permission to go ahead after the CRA has confirmed everything and either ship those back to the depot or permission to destroy before the entire clinical trial is over. But that has to be discussed with the sponsor, because some sponsors, they want you to wait. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So has everybody pulled the training log?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Like I said, we have 7 patients. I'm gonna let y'all just do the last. If you don't get to all 7, just start with the last patient and work your way up. So that patient ID is 90-127. So start at 90-127 and go up and do at least 4. But I hope you can get to all of them. And then again, look at the CRA visit windows and then look at the order kits. Give y'all 15 minutes to find as many discrepancies as you can. Are y'all in it? Bear with me, I have to figure this out.